Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where I have warped us forward 390 days here, and in that time we've been working on getting our science. So we're currently full on science. We do need to head around to sunlight to be able to transmit this science back. That would be pretty helpful. So let's get some sunlight here, and let's make sure that we are good on our electric charge, which we are. Excellent. So now we're going to start transmitting this science. That's going to take a little while, and we're probably going to run out of electric charge on the way, but let's just warp this on up to 10x. And yeah, not enough electric charge, that's to be expected. But let's get this transmitted on over, and then we're going to get this last little bit of science here, which we can absolutely be doing. Let's restart our science here. There we go. Now we're going again. Now, it's going to take a little bit to get this 54 science dealt with, but we got our 500 transmitted. That is fantastic. And of course, in this time, we also got a fair amount of surface deployed science and initiated our first flyby of the sun. That's definitely not a thing that we did. Maybe one of our pieces of debris or something was on an escape trajectory. That is a theoretical possibility, I suppose. So that might be what ended up happening there. We didn't escape the orbit of Kerbal, that's for sure. So that's fine. We need to warp our way through this again, and when we go up to a fast enough warp to make this reasonable, this gets really, really, like, flickery. And so I'm always concerned with that with things like, oh, what's it called? Wow, I cannot remember the word right now. But getting a seizure from that. I'm always concerned about that. So I'm going to cut that out, and we will be back. And hopefully I'll have looked up the word by the time we're done. That's kind of embarrassing that I forgot the word. See you guys in just a bit. Epilepsy, of course. It's called epilepsy. I don't know why I forgot that. But here we are. We got there in the end. And you can see here we still have a tiny amount of data. I've warped ahead almost 6 years, though, and with the diminishing returns, we're getting to the point where we're getting almost nothing out of this at this point. So we are going to get ourselves some sunlight, transmit what we've got, and call it good. We don't need to get absolutely everything that we've got here. Let's just transmit this data now, although I do kind of want to... Oh, this is a little different from what I'm used to. The roll button doesn't roll. Okay, cool. Let's position ourselves here so that we are correctly positioned for our solar panels. Then, of course, I want to transmit back this data, right? So we'll transmit this science. Fantastic. And it is done. 268 science added. We have a tiny amount more science here. I'm not going to be worried about it. At this point, we're going to call this station complete, and let's transfer our crew on out of here. So we'll move you guys here. There we go. And transfer you guys over here. Perfect. So which one of these does not have the reaction wheel? I believe it's this one. This one should have the reaction wheel. Yes, that is correct. We could grab a reaction wheel. No, we really couldn't, could we? Because we've got the medium reaction wheel on the station. Okay, we'll just call it good. Let's get out of here. So obviously, this is not going to survive reentry. This trunk section here is intended to be ejected. So let's undock here. And they are out of here. It's kind of an odd way to go, but I guess the lack of reaction wheel doing it there. Okay. So we have no reaction wheel, of course. We want to be at retrograde, and we want to just bring this right on down. So let's just freeze our physics right here, and let's make our way over to retrograde and bring our periapsis height down to somewhere around... probably around 20k would be fine here. I'm just thinking about our apoapsis height and how fast we'll be going. I'm sure it'll be fine. So let's bring this to about 20k. So we're just deorbiting this here. We've got a bunch of deorbiting ahead of us. Okay, so something along the lines of that. And now I'm going to ditch our trunk section here. This will burn up on reentry, and that is fully expected. So we ditch that. That did not ditch. There we go. That's more like it. Now we don't actually have any way to hold attitude on re-entry here. The good news is we shouldn't have any burning off problems. We should hopefully be aerodynamically stable here. Hopefully. But even if we aren't, we should be completely fine to re-enter with this. This is all heat shield here. Our parachutes should be pretty solid. If we lose a docking port, that's not the end of the world. So this is going to be the spicy one, and we'll see what happens. So let's warp on forward. Excellent. The real question is, when we hit the atmosphere, what's going to happen? Which direction are we going to be going from drag? I guess we'll find out. Perfect. We're aerodynamically stable in the direction we want to be facing. Well, stable-ish. Stable is maybe a strong term. I believe that shadow that we just saw would have been, yeah, there goes our trunk section. Fantastic. So yeah, stable is definitely a strong term, but we are on our way in. We do want to land landing, and that does kind of look likely here. Basically right over the KSC. Okay, nice. I like it. So in we come here, and that was our trunk section blowing up there. We actually want to move this guy up. There we go. And we're slowing down pretty dramatically, so we're definitely going to get a land landing here. Beautiful. Drogues out. And mains. And down we go. This capsule is not going to be particularly problematic for us, I don't think. We might do some rolling on the ground. It's pretty round. We'll see how it goes. But for now, we're just going to head on down. We don't have much in this capsule that we're going to end up losing. So that's all good. One thing to ask, what about recovery in our trunk section? How are we supposed to recover any science that we might bring along? Well, the answer to that is this is actually intended to put all of that science, which currently was empty. It's intended to put all of that into the station processing lab. So that'll be fine. We're going to bring this Soyuz right on down. This looks like a pretty decent spot to re-enter, actually. No issues at all here, and the lack of reaction wheel didn't really harm this at all. So that's great. Downward we go. The question is, are we going to be rolling here? No, we're good. Okay, so we'll recover that vessel. Fantastic. That was the spicy one. That was the spicy one. So, the question now becomes, how are we going to get the others down? Well, basically, the same way. Well, the other Soyuz. The station is just going to need to be deorbited, and I believe it naturally deorbited. They may have burned to deorbit it. I'd have to look that up. But for now, we're just going to burn to deorbit. There's no such thing as natural deorbit in KSP, so that's not really an option. We could grab some R&D here, and really the only thing that we could grab is nuclear propulsion or this aerodynamics tree. We'll go down the aerodynamics tree here and take what we can. I'll also grab heavy landing here. That's not strictly speaking necessary, but we'll call that good for now. And then let's head into the tracking station. And let's see what we can get for getting our other Soyuz down. Or should we deorbit the space station first? I mean, we'd have to decouple it, right? But we could definitely do that. It's going to burn up on re-entry. We're not expecting it to survive to the ground. I think we'll do it after. So let's just get this undocked here. This is a somewhat cleaner undock. Actually, this is quite a lot cleaner undock. Okay, let's turn SAS on, or actually, let's just turn Smart ASS on. Get ourselves a little bit of distance here with our RCS, and we'll hop over to retrograde. Phenomenal. We're going to do basically the same exact thing, although we're probably going to hit the water this time, if I had to guess. Let's burn ourselves retrograde and bring our periapsis straight on down. We're going to be a little higher on the apoapsis, but that's okay. I'm not concerned about it. We had lots of margin on that last re-entry, so that's completely fine. Let's bring this down to 20. That's 21, and good enough. So let's ditch our trunk section. There we go, and we're just going to hold surface velocity minus here, which we can do. That said, we're going to have electric charge draining off. For the time being, let's warp on down. And we'll see how our electric charge holds out, but we know that we're fine without it, so it doesn't actually matter. Let's re-enter. Okay, so orienting around to surface velocity minus. Yeah, we're definitely losing some electric charge, but this should be just a slightly cleaner re-entry than the last one. It's not that big of a deal, although I do need to remember to do that. We don't want to necessarily actuate this first, or really at all. Right now, anyway. Eventually, perhaps, but not right now. This is not necessarily designed for it. It's basically just for ditching the heat shield, right? In this sort of a situation, and I'd rather recover the heat shield. So, I think that's okay. This looks like this might also be a land landing, which would be great. Of course, for Soviet landings, we're looking for land landings. For US landings, we're looking for splashdowns. So this just happened to work out here, and I'm very happy about that. Definitely a lot less oscillation here. Drogue out. Or rather, drogues out, and mains out. And down we go. We don't need smart ASS on anymore. And downward we go. We're still about 10 kilometers up right now. Make that 7. 5 kilometers up. It's a weird way to say kilometers, but okay. 3 kilometers. Wait, what's our actual height? That was our sea level height. We're 1 kilometer up right now, so there goes the mains at this point. And we just gently drift on down. Valentina, Bill, and Corvy are, of course, happy to be back after their, 5-year excursion. If we go into mission elapsed time, okay, almost a 7-year excursion. It would have been a lot longer if I had waited for all of the science and we would have gotten, 5 science out of it. So I was just like, these diminishing returns are rough, right? Let's just cut our losses on this one. In reality, of course, this thing did not fly for 7 years. I think it was 200 days. I'd have to double check that. Well, we actually ended up losing our heat shield there, but that's fine. No major issues here. We'll recover this vessel, and then we'll deorbit our space station. So technically, do we count this as 3 flights and the completion? We already got paid for launching the station, right? I believe we did. I'm going to count this as 2 flights. I'm not going to count Salyut as a category completion because we're doing the first space stations as our category. So the 2 Soyuz flights should net us 400,000 at this point. Okay, sounds good. For now, this is all fine. Let's bring down our other vehicle. The space station, to be precise. Salyut-1, your time has come. You're creaking and groaning at this point, and we gotta handle this. We absolutely gotta handle this. So let's get this thing out of orbit. The question is, what altitude do we want to bring this down at for burn-up? Well, we should definitely go into something like retrograde here. There we go. This thing is so snappy. This is not retrograde. Let's control from here. That's more like it. This is retrograde. Fantastic. So we're, of course, going to throttle up here, and the question is, do we have enough fuel to bring this down to a reasonable point? I think we do. How long of a burn time do we have? 82 seconds? Oh yeah, that should be more than enough. Okay, let's burn this. That is very loud. I'm going to zoom out here so it is a little less loud. And then we'll keep an eye on our periapsis height here. I think we'll put it at 40. I want to make sure it burns up before it actually hits the ground, ideally. So really, if we wanted to do that, well, no, this will be fine. This should absolutely burn up. So that'll be fine. We're going to lose our solar panels very early. All of this is, of course, going to be a loss, but that is expected and was planned. So this is fine. We're going to get some decent acceleration here. And if we really wanted to be spicy here, then we could consider doing something like radial out and coming in like horizontally like this. An atmospheric analysis over Kerbin's deserts. I mean, it doesn't do us any good to grab it. So we're going to do it. It's literally useless. Let's orient ourselves about like this. And our solar panels should be the first to go. We're just going to park here at radial out so that we are positioning with maximum drag. We can see here our periapsis dropping down, and let's head on through the atmosphere. We should be saying goodbye to Salyut-1 here. I mean, we definitely are. It's not going to survive this. That is a guarantee, and that is exactly what we want. So that is all good. We're definitely seeing these overheats, and we fully expect that. I'm honestly surprised that they're still there. The solar panels, I mean. We're doing pretty well on that front. We're barely slowing down right now. Our amount of drag is not as high as we'd like it to be if we were trying to recover this, but we're not trying to recover it, right? We deliberately want it to burn up in the atmosphere to not create debris. So onward we go. We're definitely not coming back up. There's no doubt about that. Kaboom! Kaboom! That bit going off there, and it'll continue to blow up. Lots of explosions happening there. Our solar panels finally going away. About time on those. I'm a little surprised that this is still going, but I'm sure it won't survive. It definitely won't survive the impact. We're actually moving kind of slow at this point. Wow, okay, so now we know for a fact that we don't actually need a heat shield for the mobile processing labs. Intriguing. Again, it's not going to survive the impact. It'll splash down into the water hard and be destroyed. We're hoping, anyway. I mean, if we get some recovery on it, maybe that's okay. That actually isn't a terrible idea. It is very sunset right now. Very, very sunset. And curse splash. Yeah, nothing survives. We're not shocked about that one. It's all gone. So they're calling this a catastrophic failure. It's not. It's a catastrophic success. This was the goal. We're going to hop back to the Space Center here. Yeah, the Space Center. Actually, let's hop back to the tracking station. We do have a little bit more cleanup to do, and we're kind of in a bit of a transitional point right now, right? Because next up, we need to do Skylab. Yeah, let me mark off Salyut-1 visits here. Done. There we go. And let's get Skylab set up here soon enough. But first off, we've got a lot of debris that we need to clear up here. So anything that is marked as debris, I want to clear off of our list. So any of this stuff we are hiding from the list, and we are only including debris here. So this is going to be a little bit of a tedious process, no doubt about that, and I'm not going to make you watch this whole thing. I'll cut this out here, and I will be back in just a moment once we've cleaned some of this out. Okay, so I've got all of that cleaned out. We also do need to get our payment for those 2 Soyuz flights. So let's do that real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Putting us at about 2 million in funding. That's pretty decent. Do we want to get an upgrade here? I mean, we're pretty much as good as we're going to get for our science right now, for at least in-space low around Kerbal. But in-space high, we might be able to get a decent amount more science from processing. And what is the altitude that Skylab is going to be at? 434 by 420, or rather 442 kilometers. Okay, and it only gets visited once. Noted. So that orbit is definitely high enough to be considered high Kerbal orbit, so we're going to get a decent amount of science out of that. We could consider upgrading our R&D, although I think we'll probably wait until we know that we need to upgrade our R&D at this point. I think that's going to be the concept there. So now we need to get started on getting Skylab good to go. Skylab is going to be lifted off with... I didn't prep for this. I thought this would be the whole episode. Okay, let me pull up Skylab here, and let's do a little bit of research here and figure out what exactly we've got going on. So, Skylab. So this is Skylab here. It looks like this. We'll definitely get some of that going. We can see that there's like a Prototype Octo right there almost. And we've got this like cross pattern of these solar panels, and then these solar panels out here. That's the broad silhouette anyway. What is the launcher here? So this was the Skylab configuration. It definitely launched inside of a fairing. No surprises there. What was the launch vehicle here? SA-513. Got it. So using the... Do we have like a photo of it on the pad? That would be ideal. Apparently we don't have a photo of it on the pad, at least not directly linked in here. And there is actually, yeah, the Skylab 2 mission departed. So this is the actual photograph that the crew took as they were leaving it. We can definitely get something kind of like this going. Is this the docking adapter over here? It kind of doesn't look like it. We'll have to do a little bit of research into this, for sure, to figure out where the docking adapter is. But it kind of looks to me like this might be a docking adapter. This does not look like one to me. There might be one on this far side as well. Again, I didn't prepare for this. So, actually, hello. Okay, so we can see that the docking adapter is actually right here. The lunar module / Apollo telescope mount is right here. So this is kind of also a docking port then. We've got the ATM solar array panels here. We've got the OWS solar array panels, which it looks like were supposed to be on both sides. They're clearly not unfurled over here though. So perhaps there was like a failure or something along those lines. Okay. The real question then is, what launch vehicle did this use? So SA-209 served on standby for Skylab 4 and ASTP and has been preserved. So it would have been like one of these bad boys, right? Okay, interesting. This definitely has a lot of Saturn V DNA to it, but it is very much not a Saturn V. Gotcha. So we've got like this quad, almost poodle-like engine here, and then a couple, like 4 almost mainsails here. We've got fins here, and then this is a very interesting structure that they've got going on here with a bunch of like individual tanks around like a center core tank. But they all group together out into this wider fairing, right? That's interesting. That's very, very interesting. So we would end up with having, we would want to start with Skylab, right? No doubt about that. So starting with Skylab itself, we would want to design this. So we know that we're going to start with something like a docking port. I want to have a Prototype Octo 2 on here as our root part. This is going to be that base, almost Octo-like part that I previously flagged. And that's going to have a decoupler right there. So we would then have a decoupler here. So this is what, a TD12 size? TD12 kind of works here, I think. I think that's okay. So we'll have that be there. We would need to have a fairly chunky section here. And that section is actually going to be a science processing lab. That's a pretty big boy. No doubt about that. No doubt about that one. Well, in that case, we could definitely go for a larger root part here. Something along the lines of, well, we would still want a Prototype Octo 2, I would think. Yeah, I'm still going to stick with that. So it's going to be, this is going to be kind of strut issues. Let's put on a TD25 decoupler here. Let's make sure that we're strutted together on the exterior here. So I want to go from here to here and make sure that we're strutted there. So it'll be something kind of like that. And then we have some like superstructure right here. So we can have something like a, almost a modular girder adapter here. Okay, noted. Something kind of like this, but this isn't really what we'd be going for. A modular girder hub and then a modular girder small adapter, kind of like this, could definitely work. We'd have our docking port here. This would be a docking port junior. So we would end up putting in, where are we? Coupling. There we go. Clampotron docking port junior would go there. Then I would want to have some superstructure that goes up. I'm just looking at the way that this is set up here. Okay, so we'd have some superstructure that goes up with like a modular girder adapter here. Something, I don't like that. That would be probably a small adapter is what we would end up going for. So we would go for something like that. And then we would want to have like an octagonal strut here, maybe a couple of them. And it would go something like this. I wanted to go maybe a little higher. Yes, about there. And then we would have, taking a look at this image here, we can see that there's definitely like an internal structure here. No doubt about that. There's also one down below, but for now we're going to ignore that and pretend that there isn't one there. So I think we're going to ditch these octagonal struts and we're going to put in perhaps... Fuel is a little bit odd to put in here. Perhaps we would simply put in a bit of like a structural fuselage or something. Can we get a smaller size of this? A smaller sized structural fuselage would be ideal. The structural tube is huge. This one is kind of big still, and that's kind of the smallest one available there. So I guess we'll go with like fuel tanks. Do we want this to be foldable? Maybe. Or, well, we need it to be fairly small, right? So we're going to go for something like a T400 is even too big. So we would need to go for like an Oscar D. Yeah, that's a little bit more like the size that we're looking for, like an Oscar C. Let's drop the fuel out of there. This is actually not going to have any fuel in it. And on top of that, I would like to put in a docking port, but this is going to be a Clampatron docking port, this big-sized docking port. So it'll be something kind of like that. Fantastic. And now we're going to do our solar panels here. I also want to... Oh, hello. I want to put in, I think up here. Yeah, up here. I want to put in a reaction wheel. So we want to make sure that we have something like a... Actually, we'll do that here. A medium reaction wheel assembly. That kind of scales it down as we go into this. Perfect. And then we would go for our solar panels. So we need like 1x6s. These do not need to retract. So we would put in like quad 1x6s here. This definitely needs to move out a little bit. Okay. So let's pull this out of here. Let's go for the Oscar D then. So the Oscar D would go here. And then the docking port would go... Hello. There we go. Right there. And then we would have these go about here, like that. Perfect. And then we would need some additional side solar panels, one on each side, apparently. And to that end, I'm actually going to rotate this guy around like this. Cool. And we would end up putting in kind of like... just thinking how we would want to do this, right? Because looking at the actual design of this, we've got this like bit that extends out here, and then the solar panels come out in groups of 3 here. So we would want something along those lines, for sure. So we would want them to be like 3x2s, right? So those look like this. They're not quite long enough. I'd really like them to be like 2x3s, but we don't actually have access to that. What would 10Cs look like? Nope. Definitely not those. 1x5? No, definitely not. These are, of course, 1x6s, which we already have on here. Those aren't what we're going for. And 3x2s. So that's not really it either. So what we need now is to have... I mean, these modular girder segments are actually about the right size. They don't really... I'd want them to fold in. So we would want them to have some sort of robotics on here. So like alligator hinges, we would end up putting those, in theory, about here, but maybe a little higher up. So about here. We would launch with it out like so. And I'd want this to be in symmetry mode. So we'd launch with it about like that, and then we would have 3 3x2s. So a 3x2 here, here, and here or so. And then we would deploy this to be like so, and like that. And then, of course, these would rotate to face whatever direction they need to for the sun. So that would be absolutely fine there. Now, I do want to make sure we don't have fuel in this. We are not going to have fuel in this station almost at all. Actually, let's put a little bit of fuel here for, like, deorbiting. But we're not planning on doing any actual maneuvers with this other than the deorbit. So let's put a couple of tiny little engines on this. I'll put on, say, quad twitches right about here. So something along the lines of this. These strut connectors are not actually connected anymore, and we should fix that. So we'll do something along the lines of that. Fantastic. So that is our Skylab design there. It's definitely imperfect, as pretty much all of my KSP builds are, but I feel like it gets the point across. The other main question that I have here is, do we want to be able to fold this up to store it? I think the answer is yes. So we're going to grab a hinge here as well. So we're going to go into robotics. We're going to go with the O1L hinge. Maybe we should go with, like, that's way too big. Okay, let's go with the O1L because this one is also way too big. This is the smallest hinge that we've got. So I want this to be rotated to be like this. Almost. Except I want it to be more like this. Okay. And then we would mount this guy right here. And then when we launch, we would launch it to be, you know, kind of stowed like this-ish. Or even just clipped together and stowed like this. That's actually, that looks decent. Yeah, it's clipped together, but that stows pretty well right there. Yeah, I like that. And then, of course, it would deploy out, and it would go here. I think that works. So we'll call this Skylab, and that will, of course, be next flight. But next episode, we will have to design the launcher for it. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Andy McGar, Spartan News, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, Kentogan, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.